Dr. Christina Romet checked her watch. 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in July 2011. Amy Winehouse sat across from her in the small consultation room at the London clinic, drumming her tattooed fingers against her thigh in a nervous rhythm that matched no song ever written. The test results lay between them like an accusation. "Amy, I need you to understand what I'm telling you." Amy's eyes were somewhere else. Through the window, maybe. Or back to Belgrade 2 nights ago, where she'd stumbled off stage after 40 minutes. The crowd had booed. The videos were already online. "Your liver function." Dr. Romet paused. She'd delivered this speech before. To other musicians, other addicts. Most ignored her. Some listened. A few lived. "I know," Amy said quietly. "Do you?" Amy looked at her then. Really looked. Those dark eyes that had stared down cameras and critics and concerned family members for years. But there was something different now. A tiredness that went deeper than hangovers. "Tell me anyway." Dr. Romete opened the file. Numbers, percentages, medical terms that translated to one simple truth. If you perform tonight, if you drink, if you continue at this pace. She set the papers down. "This could be your last concert." The silence stretched. Outside, London traffic hummed. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. Amy stood up, walked to the window, her back to the doctor, shoulders small under the vintage jacket. "Could be?" "Amy, could be or will be." Dr. Romete had been practicing medicine for 15 years. She learned to give patients hope when possible, truth when necessary. "I can't guarantee anything, but the risk. How long do I have?" "That's not the right question." Amy turned around, a half smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. "It's the only question that matters." The Roundhouse venue that evening, 7:30 p.m. James Morrison, Amy's tour manager, paced outside her dressing room. He'd received the call from Dr. Romete an hour ago. Carefully worded, professionally concerned. But the message was clear. He knocked. "Amy, come in." She was sitting in front of the mirror, applying her signature winged eyeliner. The beehive was already perfect. The vintage dress, the one from the rehab video, hung ready. "We need to talk." "No, we don't." Her voice was steady, calm. That should have been his first warning. "The doctor called." Amy's hand didn't waver. The black line extended with surgical precision. "And?" "Amy, you know what she said." She set down the eyeliner, met his eyes in the mirror. "I have a show tonight. We can cancel. Say you're sick. No one will blame you. Your health comes first." Amy turned in her chair, the full weight of her attention, that presence that could fill stadiums, focused on him. "James." "Yeah? How many people are out there?" He didn't want to answer. "The venue sold out." "How many?" 3,000. Amy nodded, picked up her lipstick. "They bought tickets to see Amy Winehouse." "Amy, if something happens, then something happens." 8:45 p.m. The opening act had finished 20 minutes ago. The crowd was restless. Drinks had been flowing for hours. Someone started a slow clap, then another. Soon the entire venue was rhythmically demanding her presence. Backstage, Amy's band waited. They'd played with her for 3 years. They knew her moods, her habits, her tells. Tonight, something was different. "She seems peaceful," said the drummer Dave. "That's what worries me," replied the guitarist Robin. Amy appeared from her dressing room. The transformation was complete. The girl from Southgate was gone. In her place stood the icon, the voice, the living embodiment of soul music in the 21st century. She walked past them toward the stage, paused. "Whatever happens tonight, it's been an honor." Before anyone could respond, she was gone. The lights dimmed. The crowd erupted, 3,000 voices screaming her name. Amy walked onto the stage, and for a moment, the noise was deafening. Then she reached the microphone, and the venue fell silent. She stood there, one hand on the mic stand, the other hanging loose at her side, looking out at the sea of faces, young and old. Fans who'd followed her since Frank. New converts who'd discovered her through Back to Black. "Evening, London." Her voice carried perfectly. No amplification needed. It was pure, clear, untouched by whatever was destroying her body. She turned to the band. A slight nod. The opening chords of Stronger Than Me filled the space. What happened next would be talked about for years, not because of what went wrong, but because of what went right. Amy sang like she was saving someone's life. Maybe her own, maybe theirs. Every word carved from experience, every note wrung from whatever remained of her soul. She moved through her set with surgical precision. You Know I'm No Good, Rehab, Valerie. Each song a chapter in her autobiography. Each performance a small masterpiece. The crowd was transfixed. This wasn't the stumbling, erratic Amy from recent performances. This was the artist who'd recorded Back to Black, the voice that had made critics weep and competitors jealous. In the VIP section, music journalist Sarah Collins watched with growing amazement. She'd seen Amy perform dozens of times, had written harsh reviews of recent shows, had used words like tragic and waste in her columns. Tonight she was watching something different, something final. This isn't a concert, she whispered to her photographer. This is a last testament. The photographer lowered his camera. Some moments were too sacred to capture. On stage, Amy moved with purpose. Each song choice deliberate, each transition seamless. She was constructing something, building towards something. The audience could feel it without understanding it. During You Know I'm No Good, she changed the lyrics, subtly. Instead of I cheated myself, she sang I completed myself. A tiny alteration that shifted the entire meaning, from confession to acceptance, from regret to resolution. The band noticed. Robin, her guitarist, would later say it was the moment he realized what was happening. She wasn't performing her songs anymore. She was finishing them. Midway through Love Is a Losing Game, she stopped singing. The band continued for a few bars, then gradually faded to silence. Amy stood at the microphone, eyes closed, breathing, her chest rising and falling in the spotlight. The beehive slightly disheveled now, makeup still perfect. The venue held its breath. 3,000 people afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell was being woven. When she opened her eyes, she looked directly at a young woman in the front row, maybe 19, maybe 20, tears streaming down her face. The girl was clutching a vinyl copy of Frank, Amy's first album. You all right, love? The girl nodded, unable to speak. Amy smiled, the first genuine smile of the night. Not the performer's smile, not the public Amy. The real one. The girl from Southgate who'd once dreamed of being a jazz singer. Yeah, me too. She bent down, took the vinyl from the girl's hands, and signed it with the eyeliner pencil from her pocket. Handed it back. Keep singing, she whispered into the microphone, but her eyes never left the girl's face. Whatever happens, keep singing. She turned to the band again, but instead of the planned next song, she said something that made the bassist's eyes widen. Black to Black. From the top. Like we rehearsed it. They hadn't rehearsed anything, not in months, but they knew what she meant. The version from the album, the version that had made her famous, the version that had broken her heart and everyone else's. The piano introduction, haunting and inevitable. Amy's voice, when it came in, was different than it had been all night. Smaller, more vulnerable, like she was singing it for the first time. He left no time to regret, kept his dick wet with his same old safe bet. The words hit differently tonight, like a confession rather than a performance. By the time she reached the chorus, half the audience was crying. I go back to black. The phrase hung in the air. Final. Resigned. True. When the song ended, the silence lasted 10 seconds, an eternity in concert time. Then the applause started. Not the wild cheering from earlier, something deeper, more respectful. The sound of 3,000 people saying goodbye without knowing it. Amy performed 3 more songs, each one perfect, each one a gift. When she finished Rehab, she didn't leave the stage immediately. Instead, she stood at the microphone, looking out at the crowd. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. She set the microphone back in its stand, blew a kiss to the audience and walked off. The crowd cheered for 15 minutes, called for encores, demanded more. But Amy Winehouse had given them everything she had. Backstage, James found her sitting on a road case, still in her dress, makeup still perfect. She was holding a bottle of water, sipping it slowly. The first time he'd seen her drink water at a concert in months. "How do you feel?" Amy looked up at him. For the first time in months, her eyes were clear. Not just sober clear. Something deeper. Like she'd found something she'd been looking for. Complete. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and began removing her fake eyelashes. One at a time, carefully placing them in their case. "James? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For believing in the music, even when you stopped believing in me." James felt his throat tighten. "Amy, I need you to know," she continued, wiping away the winged eyeliner with deliberate strokes. "Tonight wasn't about dying. It was about living. Really living. One last time." She died 3 days later. July 23rd, 2011, 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in Camden. Alone. But that's not the end of the story. The reviews of that final concert were unanimous. A return to form. The Amy we remembered. A masterpiece of live performance. But the people who were there knew better. It wasn't a return to anything. It was an ending. Perfectly crafted. Deliberately final. Amy Winehouse's last gift to the world that had loved her and destroyed her in equal measure. The bootleg recordings circulated for years. Fans traded them like sacred texts. But everyone agreed, the recordings couldn't capture what happened in that room. The electricity, the finality, the sense of witnessing something unrepeatable. Dr. Romete read about the concert in the papers. Then she did something she'd never done before. She wrote a letter to Amy's parents. "Your daughter knew," she wrote. "She made a choice. It wasn't the choice I would have recommended, but it was hers to make. And she made it beautifully. She gave those people something they'll carry forever. In medicine, we try to save lives. Amy understood that sometimes you save souls instead." The letter sat unfinished on her desk for 3 days. Finally, she sealed it and sent it. Mitch Winehouse called her a week later. They spoke for an hour, both of them crying. 5 years later, James Morrison gave an interview about that night. "People ask me if I should have stopped her," he said. "If I should have canceled the show, made her go to hospital, forced her to choose differently." He paused, looked out the window of his office. On his desk was a photo from that last concert. Amy mid-song, arms outstretched, face tilted toward the lights. "But I watched her on that stage. I saw what she did for those people, how she transformed their pain into something beautiful, how she gave them a piece of herself that they'll carry forever, how she turned her ending into their beginning." Another pause, his voice quieter now. "How do you stop someone from creating art, even if it kills them?" The interviewer waited. "You don't. You just witness it. And you're grateful you were there." 10 years later, the young woman from the front row, Charlotte Webb, became a singer herself. She never sold millions of records, never won Grammys, but she performed in small clubs around London, singing jazz standards and original songs. She kept the signed vinyl on her mantelpiece. Sometimes, before difficult shows, she'd look at Amy's signature and remember that whispered instruction, "Keep singing." In interviews, Charlotte would say that Amy saved her life that night, not with words or advice, but with example. "She showed me that music is bigger than the musician, that art can outlive the artist, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is give everything you have, even if it costs everything you are." Amy Winehouse performed her last concert 3 days before she died. Her doctor had warned her it might kill her. She chose to sing anyway, not because she was reckless, not because she didn't care about her life, but because she understood something the rest of us rarely do. Sometimes the art matters more than the artist. Sometimes the gift matters more than the giver. Sometimes you have to go back to black to show the world what light looks like. 3,000 people witnessed that truth. They watched a woman choose her legacy over her longevity. They watched genius burn itself out beautifully. And they'll never forget the sound of Amy Winehouse saying goodbye. In the days following her death, stories emerged from that final concert. The sound engineer who said her voice was the strongest he'd heard it in years. The security guard who watched hardened bouncers wipe away tears during Black to Black. the bartender who stopped serving drinks during the final three songs because even he couldn't look away. But perhaps the most telling account came from Dr. Romet herself, in an interview she gave years later. "I've thought about that day countless times," she said, "about whether I could have said something different, done something more. But I've come to understand that Amy wasn't choosing to die that night. She was choosing to live, fully, completely, without compromise." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "In my profession, we measure success by years added to life. But Amy measured it differently. She measured it in moments, in songs, in the faces of people in crowds who felt understood for the first time. By that measure, she succeeded magnificently. The concert bootleg that circulated underground became legendary not for its technical quality. The recording was poor, captured on someone's phone, but for what you could hear between the songs, the silence, the breathing, the sound of 3,000 people experiencing something they couldn't name but would never forget. Music historians would later call it one of the greatest farewell performances in rock history. They would compare it to Johnny Cash's Hurt, to David Bowie's Black Star, to other artists who seemed to know their time was ending. But those comparisons missed the point. This wasn't a farewell performance. It was a completion. The final brushstroke on a canvas that had been years in the making. Amy Winehouse walked onto that stage knowing it might be her last walk. She picked up the microphone knowing her voice might never be heard again. And she sang like someone who had finally figured out what she was born to do. Not to live forever, but to make forever live in that moment. In that room, in the hearts of 3,000 strangers who became witnesses to something sacred. When the last note faded and Amy Winehouse walked off that stage for the final time, she left behind more than music. She left behind proof that art can transcend the artist, that beauty can emerge from brokenness, that sometimes the most profound act of living is knowing when to say goodbye. The Roundhouse venue still hosts concerts, but employees will tell you that some nights, when the lights are dim and a singer hits a particularly pure note, you can feel her presence, not haunting the place, blessing it. Because that's what Amy Winehouse did in her final performance. She didn't just sing songs, she transformed a concert hall into a cathedral. She turned entertainment into transcendence. She reminded 3,000 people, and countless others who would hear the story, that music isn't just sound. It's the sound of being human, completely, desperately, beautifully human. The sound of someone who refused to compromise her truth, even when that truth was killing her. The sound of a voice that chose authenticity over longevity, art over safety, completion over continuation. That night at the Roundhouse, Amy Winehouse didn't just perform her last concert. She wrote her final verse, and it was perfect. A masterpiece written in melody and silence, performed once, never to be repeated.